Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today is Fridays with Rosa, Tribal Grants, Don't Be an Island to Yourself. Today is November 3rd, and we are being recorded. My name is Lois Atkins. I am the Training and Development Coordinator for the Native Learning Center, and today I will be your webinar facilitator. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. The materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws and treaties. The terms permit you to use the sites for your personal and non-commercial use only. You may print or save copies of the sites solely for your personal and non-commercial use. You may not distribute, transfer, transmit, copy, upload, download, post, publish, display, perform, modify, or otherwise create derivative works from any of the materials without the Seminole Tribe's prior written consent. Now, if you look at the top of your screen, you will see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. With that icon, you can either raise hand, agree, disagree, or step away. Now, your screen should look similar to this graphic here. The box labeled web links is where you will find our survey about today's webinar, along with the links to join our email list and any other links that will be seen throughout today's presentation. Finally, to the right of the screen, we have a chat box available. This is how you will communicate with instructor and NLC staff, which is myself. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to interact by using the chat box. Simply type your message and hit enter or click that up arrow icon button to submit. Tech support issues should also be submitted here. Know that most can be solved by exiting and re-entering the meeting room. Let's all try out the chat box together now by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation. And it is with a great pleasure that I now introduce Rosa McNally.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another Friday, and this is our last grading factor for our ICDBG. So for those of you that aren't familiar with me, I have over 20 years experience as a grant writer and a project manager for tribes in northern Maine. I live up in Houlton, Maine. We're on the Canadian border. I'm not from Massachusetts. You'll notice that I have a wicked accent. And I've had a lot of experience. I started out in the grant writing world working for municipalities and economic and community development. And I hope that this information is beneficial to you. And I see somebody from Presque Maine. Hi, Lisa. So again, as I stated, this is our last part of, so the ICDBG has 5 rating factors. And so this is the last rating factor that we're going to go through for ICDBG. So this is worth 6 points. And again, I will tell you with every single rating factor that every single point counts. And sometimes I think that people skim on this part from different applications that I've reviewed. And so again, 1 or 2 points can make a difference of being funded. So we always want to make sure that we're paying very close attention and going back and reviewing our application and making sure that we're getting absolutely answering it. So today we're going to be talking about coordination, our outputs, and our outcomes. And as you can see, we got a little llama there, and coordination is underway, folks. We're ready to go. We've got a team. So don't be an island to yourself. Realize that there's other people there that can help you and that you have to. There's our bubble. We're not on this island all by ourselves. So your points are going to be assigned as follows, but please note that if the grant is awarded and it's not clear whether or not you already demonstrated your citizen participation requirements, if your 24 CFR 1003-604 were met, the grantee will have to show citizen participation compliance at pre-award. So you always want to make sure that you have that coordination up front prior to your application. And if you were in the last session that we had last week, you'll recognize that when I was talking about creating a committee prior to putting your grant application together, and carry that same committee through once you've been awarded. How are you scored? Well, in this section, you've got to demonstrate that the activities are consistent with strategic plans or policy goals of your community. You identified and described how you plan to coordinate and work on the project with organizations that will not be providing leverage funds to the project. So I want to stop and explain this a little bit more, and I've highlighted it in our next section. This seems to be a point of confusion with a lot of applications that I've seen. Is they're using their architects and their engineers. Well, yes, they're coordinating. They're helping you coordinate, obviously, the whole project. But what HUD is asking you right here is, how are you involving other agencies, or especially with tribes? We predominantly work with the departments within our tribe, but they want to know, so how are they helping you with this project? How are they investing their time, and how are you coordinating activities, but they're not providing leverage to the project? And you summarize how you involve the community in developing the application pursuant to the regulatory requirements. So again, this is redundant, but there's a reason why this is redundant. So as I explained before, let's use the example of when we created a youth center. Well, when we were building this facility, I had youth on the committee. I had youth directors. At the time, they were underneath the health department, which was going to be the one that was going to be providing the remember we talked about the operation and maintenance plan, and they were going to be providing that. So why would I involve the health director in this when really it's the youth program? Well, if her program's paying for it, she's going to be looking at energy efficiency costs. She knows that she's only got a set amount of money set aside to be able to sustain the cost of operations. So it's really important that she's involved and that she understands, and we understand what the needs are for the program and how they can sustain it. So again, I've already talked about this. You know, they're not providing leverage resources. So do you have a strategic or a comprehensive plan? This is another area of weakness that I am seeing with a lot of tribes, that we're so busy in our departments of what it is that we're doing that we're really not aware of what's going on in the other departments of our tribes. And we have a phenomenal association up here for all the main tribes, and they do a lot of surveys. They do a lot of strategic planning. And then we have another organization that I had mentioned to you, I believe it was our last session. They're a community development financing institution for main tribes. Well, both of these places right here, that they do all kinds of strategic plannings with the tribes. They have written reports. They do the strategic plans. They identify what the goals are. They set what the priorities are. So you need to be aware of, well, who's doing this? If you have a planning department, ask them, what's your latest plan that you have? And then you're going to go to that section that identifies what your goal is for this project. So maybe it's housing. Maybe you're building a health center. Maybe you're doing a youth center. And you're going to go to that section of the plan, and hopefully you're going to see that this was a priority. So you're going to go to that finding in that plan that they've written up, and you're going to reiterate the importance of why this is a community-wide identified goal for the tribe. This is sustaining that. This isn't just you as a grant writer sitting there and saying, well, yes, we need this. You're proving it, that a study was done, a survey was done, people participated, and this is it. So you're going to add, you're not going to put the whole study, that whole plan, the whole survey or whatever was done, but you're going to go to that part of it and you're going to copy it and scan it, and you're going to use that as an attachment to substantiate what it is you're saying here, and then you're going to prove it with your attachment. So Here's an example. In 2020, the Winning Tribe of Maine conducted an on-site 2-day tribal-wide strategic planning summit to identify the needs, goals, and priorities of the tribe. The 2-day session was attended by tribal government officials, housing commissioners, staff, and tribal community citizens. Identified as the number 2 priority was new housing construction. Please note excerpt in attachment rating factor 5, because this is where we're at. I'm just putting the page number for what the attachment's going to be, 34. This project aligns with the stated needs and priorities of the Winning Tribe in achieving their mission of creating affordable housing. So you're not just a grant writer trying to determine what the needs of the tribe are. You have a specific study and can demonstrate that. I think that we've all been to these strategic planning meetings, right? And this is exactly what the wall looks like. And I have actually taken pictures when I've been to some of these things before, especially if I knew, again, I've stated in prior trainings that we've had here, that you can start an idea for a project and it doesn't come to fruition for what? 5 years, 10 years. I've had one that we waited 10 years to see it come to fruition. But within that time period, we may have had one of these roundtable discussions or whatever, and all of these things get posted to the wall. I take a picture of it. What do? I scan it, I save it in my folder for, excuse me, when I know that sooner or later, I'm going to be writing a grant application for that. And then even if you have pictures of the meeting itself and you can see that there are people there, they are participating, it makes it real for HUD when they're reviewing it, right? We want to try to make this as identifiable for them that we are a people, we are a community, we are really doing these things. We're not just answering the questions, we really are working on developing this. So what's another thing that you can do? Did you identify it if you're a housing director? Did you identify it on your Indian housing plan? If so, state that, and again, make reference to it with an attachment. So many times what I have seen in assisting tribes with their applications is that there's a certain section on their Indian housing plan. I'm not going to submit the whole housing plan. I'm going to submit the part that is related to what it is that we're trying to achieve here. Excuse me. So has that been a topic of conversation at your tribal council or your board? Find the minutes, highlight it, and cut out the discussion regarding this project and attach it. So also state how many were in attendance for the meeting. If it was an agenda item, attach the agenda as well. Are the meetings open to the public? Is the agenda posted prior to meetings? State these things. How will you work with, how will your work with other organizations? How will you work with other organizations and tribal departments? There we go. I finally said it right. So under section 2.3 of this last NOFA for the ICDBG application, there was connection to tribal youth. So you best involve your youth here. The main purpose is to prepare youth to achieve economic self-sufficiency and further the interest of their tribal community. Always try to involve your youth, but especially in this application. This is something you're being scored on. And what's my favorite thing? You don't want to lose any points at all. Get your points every single point. So what are some youth specific projects? Well, like I mentioned, we've done a youth center. There's Boys and Girls Club. Is there a designated space in your behavioral health for youth activities? Gymnasiums, Head Start, Early Head Start, all these things are project specific. But what if your project is housing construction? Well, here's an example. The Tribal Education Department has identified 2 high school youth who have been expressed an interest in construction management. Through this process, the will coordinate with the Tribal Education Department to involve 2 youth in meeting with the project team and the architect and engineering firm in developing the scope of work, budget, and implementation from an inception to completion. So youth are going to learn administrative skills such as contracts, construction, procurement, grant administration. That's going to enhance their education in tribal project management. Plus, as I've stated previously, when you keep your committee pre-grant application, and then when you're awarded, there is a level of empowerment for that community member because this is their community. It's their family. They are a part of history. They are a part of creating something. So this is a great example, and this is something that has been offered with the positions that I have done as well, is involving them. So again, when you're doing, well, I'll use the youth center, for example. They were very involved in the layout. They knew they were going to be doing cooking classes. And so where would we have the instructors in comparison to where would the youth be? They were involved in the color schemes. They were involved in construction meetings and asked about what they thought was this building is being constructed for them. So you show them how to lead, and really you end up learning more. I think that you end up learning more from them than they learn from us. The whole point is to have them involved and for them to learn skills. So let's say that we have involved them from an administrative point of view, and they thought that, wow, you know, I'd really like to do grant administration. I see what Rose is doing. That looks like so much fun. I'd like to be able to do that. And they get into it and it's like, oh my gosh, I hate all these regulations. And why do you have to do it this way? And this isn't fun at all. Boy, there's a lot more paperwork to this than I thought. That's not lost, especially for a youth. If anything, it gives them a clearer direction of maybe, well, you know what, maybe I better take a U-turn here because this really isn't what I thought it was. How much better is that for them to be learning these things now as opposed to going to school and getting an education, then getting out into the field and finding out, gee, I really don't like that at all. Youth construction, keeping them involved. So here's another one. The Tribal Education Department has identified 2 interested youth in the construction trades. Through coordination with the Education Director, we as Summer Program Director and General Contractor, 2 youth, 16 years of age or older, will be hired as laborers during the summer months for years 1 and 2 of the project. Youth will participate in on-the-job training, supervised by the general contractor and monitored by the education and WEA directors. So I'm not sure if everybody understands, and if you have a summer program under the Workforce Investment Act, but we utilize that program every year. And this is a really great way of training youth and keeping them involved, and they're investing back into the community. Another facility that we're creating. The newly constructed facility will provide for life skills, financial literacy, and job readiness. Youth will also receive community service credits for graduation criteria. So we all know that is a really wonderful program that tribes can offer for their own youth, so that they're investing back into their community. They're still getting their service credits that they need for graduation, and they're within their own community, their own people, and who they identify with. The center will also provide space for youth to enroll in Train the Trainer course instructed by Four Directions Development Corporation. So this is a CDFI, the Community Development Financial Institution that I was telling you about that we have here in Maine. After completion, youth will peer lead a training on budgeting at youth group. And so you can think, well, gee, how do they really need to learn budgeting at this level? Well, even with our projects, if we're involving them in the administration, and it can be really overwhelming. You're talking about millions of dollars and you're breaking it down by line item. But I know especially at this level, it's like, well, what do they even have for cash available? Part of the problems that we're facing for many adults is they were never taught as a youth how to manage their money, how to set up a budget. What does it cost for interest rate? What are you actually paying? And so then isn't it a great idea if they become the peer lead and then they train their own peers? So you've got WIA and you have tarot. So I've been working with some tribes who have tarot departments, and it's so amazing. It's like, wow, you guys are so lucky. So are you working with your WIA program, your tarot program, your health department? If so, how? How are they helping with the coordination of this project? So the Winning Housing Authority will work with the tribal WIA program to coordinate referrals of applicants for job placement opportunities for this project based on their skill set. WIA will work with the architect and engineering firm and the tarot director in developing the scope of work regarding language and available resources in Indian preference for the Winning Tribe Employment Rights Office of available qualified tribal citizens and businesses. So everybody's working together here. And even this right here, language and available resources and Indian preference. We can say this and we may work with it all the time, but how many of you have to educate your architect and engineering firm and give them those regulations so that they can understand it? The behavioral health director will be involved during the design phase of the health clinic's construction. The director will provide design feedback as it relates to workflow, space requirements, staff safety, confidentiality provisions, and how the design relates to the necessary delivery of their program services. So don't confuse this with saying, well, isn't this affecting them? So when we're talking about leverage resources, right, we're talking about coordination from departments, organizations, agencies that are not providing leverage. They're not providing any leverage on this. This is the assumption of how this statement was written, that behavioral health, the health department, they're not contributing anything as far as leverage. However, for this construction project, it's going to benefit their departments, and it's specifically going to benefit the behavioral health program. So that behavioral health director is going to be key in identifying the things that we said here, your space requirements, confidentiality. What does that workflow need to look like so that you're not invading any of the privacy of the citizens you're providing service for, but at the same time, you have the administrative layout the way that it needs to be. This is crucial. You're a grant writer. You're trying to put this together. You don't run their program. You need to know, they need to be involved. You need to know what it is they need. What's another way that we can add for our coordination? The Tribal Environmental Department will assist the contracted agency for the completion of the environmental review and provide any historical preservation, environmental tasks completed on the project site, or concerns. For example, soil conditions, existing environmental concerns, brownfield environmental. So predominantly, the construction projects that I've worked on, I have to hire someone on the outside to be able to do our environmental for us. But we have our own historic preservation office, and probably most of you that are here do, but that department's not providing any leverage, but is showing that we're providing a coordination of services with the agency that we're hiring to do that environmental review. And so our environmental department or our natural resources department or whatever, they're going to work with whatever agency it is that we have hired to do the environmental review and give them any information that we already have that's consistent with the site. Now, in my position, I would still be doing that as well. In prior trainings that we've had, I mentioned that, especially when we were talking about the budget, that I hold a high contingency because we have such high levels of lead here that it could really impact your budget. So through the years, I have learned which properties are that could have issues or that may require soil borings. So I'm going to provide whatever information I can to that agency as well. It's a team effort. So I mentioned natural resources. So are there plans for future community gardens, tree planting? Is there a way their program can integrate with yours? Does this flow? It's like, I can't tell you how many department meetings we have had, directors meetings that we've had, and it's like, oh, you're doing that? Oh my gosh, this would work out so well with this project here. And I was like, well, gee, I wish you would have told me. We're saying the same thing to them. We're all so busy doing what it is we're doing that we don't necessarily know who's doing what. And it's really a great thing when it all comes together. So your planning department, if you have a planning department, good for you. How can they participate in the project? What are the identified future goals of the tribe's projects, and how does your project enhance theirs and vice versa? Do they have goals for solar power? Can they review plans and make suggestions? So again, think. Who do you have? What can they do? How can they contribute? And they probably are already doing it. You just can't see the forest for the trees and say, oh yeah, that's right, they do that. So the Winning Housing Authority residential coordinator, the social services navigator, and vocational rehabilitation job coach will work with the residents of the new duplexes with referrals for case management services, job training, education, health, and substance use programs. Think. It's not just a house. It's not just a home. It's not just a public facility. What's going to happen? What is the service? What are the needs of the people that you're placing in your housing units? What are the needs of the youth that are going to be in their program? What is the needs of your health center that you're creating? Whatever it is, think it through. I'm sorry, I have to skip here. So the Winning Housing Authority will coordinate services between the tribal maintenance department and the general contractor to demo the kitchens and bathrooms for each of the 23 units in the project. Many of the tribes are coordinating to be able to make the project as feasible as possible. And our maintenance guys, I don't mean just for the tribe that I'm working for, but for every tribe that I talk to and I realize what it is they're up against, I think that they're providing much more of a service than we really know. We see them for physically what it is they're doing, and we're not necessarily tying it into how this really impacts these projects. Tribal elders be an integral part of your advisory committee. They provide input on designs, colors, materials, signage, cultural components, historical value. This is an untapped resource. We're partnering with other agencies. So we're going to work with Four Directions Development Corporations, implement financial literacy programs offered at the Tribal Community Resource Center. The Resource Center is within walking distance of the housing community. With tribal members off-site, WHA will coordinate transportation with the Tribal Transportation Department for participation to and from the training. You're thinking, we're building a resource center. What's happening in the resource center? Who's going to help with this? It goes beyond just the facility. Who are you partnering with to make these things happen? Financial literacy program will assist the newly hired employees in skills such as how to budget their new income, plan for a rainy day, a new car, save and learn life skills for self-sustainable employment. FDDC will also incorporate workforce life skills training program addressing skills such as reliable transportation, being on time, daycare, sick time, work ethic, conflict resolution, communication styles. These are all key ingredients that I'm learning in some other organizations that I serve with, that this is key in not just with tribal, but broad base across the nation, that these are really, really key. So for instance, I had participated in a training that a major construction company here in the state of Maine, they literally had to go through when they hired a new entry-level laborer. They had to teach them financial literacy and what to do with their money, because as soon as they got paid, and they have to travel for their job, so they might travel 2 hours and stay at a hotel. They've spent all their money within the first 2 or 3 days in eating out. So it took time for them to sit down and explain to them how to prepare meals, how to prepare things for when you're in a hotel, and how to save your money, and how to plan ahead, how to keep money so that by the time you get paid, you still have a little money left over. So these are ways that we can work with partnering organizations. We're going to collaborate, and there's a great big us. FDDC will work with USDA Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations for job placement requirements to manage and operate the new food distribution center. Job training will be specifically developed for each position for the food distribution center. So let's say while we're creating this, we're building a new building, and it's going to be a food distribution center. But we already know that while we're doing this, while we're building this building, the outcome of what it is we're trying to do is we're going to have a program running there. We want to be able to, as soon as this building is done, if we haven't already received the funding and we haven't hired our staff for it yet, that we're going to find out what the requirements are for that job, and to make sure that we've hired the people and that they're in place and specific for the position that they're going to need for that. So citizen participation. So I don't know about you, but it seems to be like it's one way or the other way. Like you get a lot of people that show up, or no one shows up at all. But it's you have to do it. It's a requirement. And I love the ones where people come and they get excited, or even if they've got a bone of contention about what it is you're doing, their voice is important. Or they may also challenge you, maybe on the design or something, with something that you didn't necessarily think through. So I love this when people actually show up and express themselves. So you're going to explain in this section your citizen participation. So you're going to explain, how were they notified? How did the citizens know that you're going to have a public hearing on this? Did you post it at tribal offices? Did you send out newsletters? Did you post it on your social media in whatever platform that is, or multiple ones? And what did your posting state? Did you list the funding source, the project type, and the amount you are applying for? Whenever your tribe is, the Winning Housing Authority is applying for $600,000 through HUD's ICDBG program to create two 3-bedroom duplexes, whatever. You want to be able to state what it is, not just that you're applying for a grant to HUD through the ICDBG. What is it for? How much are you applying for? Was it an agenda item at a tribal council or housing commissioner meeting? If so, state this too. State that too, and put that in again as your attachment. So provide an attachment of your posting. So if you put it on Facebook or whatever, if you can screenshot that and show that, if you have a posting of it that you have put a flyer or a newsletter, I always save a copy of that. I attach it, but I state, these are the buildings that I've posted this at, and this is what the posting actually was. This is the agenda of when I presented it to tribal council. I'm not saying I'm just saying this is when it was presented to tribal council. This is when the public hearing was. If there's a sign, you want to have a sign-in sheet and attach that. It shows, it demonstrates you're not just saying 5 people participated. You've got the names of the people and their own signatures that they participated in this. And then you're going to make sure that you identify this in your tribal resolution. So the Winning Housing Authority is submitting it. Here's a way to post this. The Winning Housing Authority is submitting an Indian Community Development Block Grant application due October 5th, 2023 in the amount of $2 million for the purpose of creating 4 two-bedroom housing duplexes. Tribal citizens are encouraged to contact the WHA by phone, Facebook, Instagram, or email the Housing Executive Director, Shauna, at EWA.com for review, input, comments, or questions. The application will be discussed further at the Tribal Council meeting on September 12th at 6 p.m. So in this situation, this is where the public hearing is going to be, the Tribal Council meeting on September 12th at 6 p.m. They have an opportunity to review the application. They can review the criteria for what it is you are responding to, and they have the opportunity to review the application, to add their input and their comments and their questions to whoever is putting this application together. So your outputs and your outcomes. In this portion of your application, you must include outcomes and outputs that you hope to achieve with your project. Outputs are measured in the volume of work accomplished. They should be clear enough to allow HUD to monitor and assess the proposed project. The other thing that you want to bear in mind is if you get awarded and when you go to do your ACER report, you're going to go back to your application and you're going to respond in your ACER for what it is you said you were going to do in your application. And let's say you had to make changes for whatever reason, then you're going to identify that in your report. So an outcome is the impact you hope to achieve with your proposed project. They should be quantifiable measures or indicators that identify the change in the community, people's lives, and economic status. So you must use actual numbers and percentages in your response to get your points. So depending on the type of project, your proposed outputs could include, obviously they're not limited to it, the number of housing units you're rehabbing, the number of jobs you're creating. Now, you could be doing several of these same things. You may be rehabbing 30 units, but you also created maybe 5 tribal members got a job, 1 tribal member got a job. Doesn't matter, but if you do this, then you're just going to state this. The number of community facilities built, the square feet of any public facility. Here's some more outputs. Number of education or job training opportunities provided. How many meetings is FDDC going to have? How many people do they anticipate that they're going to be able to provide the services to? Number of tribal youth participants. Number of home ownership units constructed or financed. Number of businesses supported, included number of minority Native American. Number of persons assisted. Linear feet of infrastructure. How much water line you laid or whatever your project is. This is the easy part. This is just so straightforward. 10 single family 4-bedroom homes constructed. These are examples. 12 two-bedroom duplex apartments, 24 units total. 120 tribal citizens assisted with safe, affordable housing. 3 new jobs created for LMI citizens. 1,500 linear feet of water line. 7,219 square foot health center created. And this is a health center that I got to work on. That's what this picture is. And I'm just so thrilled with that project and the outcomes that it has for our tribal citizens. So what are the outcomes? Reduction in the number of families living in substandard housing, reduction in overcrowding, increased income and self-sufficiency resulting from the employment generated from your project. You got increased enrollment figures and higher education, increase in home ownership rates. These are all examples of some of what your outcomes can be. Reduction of drug-related crime or health-related hazards. Increased units connected to gas, phone, electric lines, roads, water, sewer. Increased accessibility for persons with disabilities or improved energy efficiency. Increased resiliency to climate change impacts. So, again, depending on your project. 30 families were moved from substandard housing. 20 families were moved from overcrowded housing. 15 units improved health and safety environmental conditions. So that's a very big one, especially for those who are working with any issues with mold remediation or whatever. So you're impacting the environment, but you're also doing the health and safety for your tribal citizens. Increased income for 3 low to moderate income tribal citizens from employment generated by the project. Increased access to clean public water. Reduction in energy costs for tribal citizens. Tribal citizens have increased access to health care within the community. 2 youth will be trained in construction and grant management. 2 youth will complete on-the-job training as a construction worker. Tribal youth will learn financial management skills. So this is a short section. You can do it. You've made it to the finish line. I see some repeat people who've been here with the other trainings. And again, read this and make sure that you're responding to this, because like I said, I've seen points taken off because they didn't clarify enough. They just put a few bullets and called it good enough on this section. So because we're done with this section, we're going to move on to my next one, but let's see. And this one is called 18 Wicked Good Grant Writing Tips, not trips. So these are just things that I have identified in the years of writing grants. And for all of you who are grant writers, you'll feel this. It's like when you greet each other, you feel like saying, I feel your pain. But there are ways of making this easier on ourselves. So number 1, plan your project in advance. So like I told you before, if you joined me in the other session, nothing prohibits you from right now. If you're planning on writing an ICDBG next year, nothing prohibits you from already getting your format together. The format is basically the same every year. You always got to read your notebook. They're going to tweak some things, but all the things that you're going to say about your procurement and everything, you can do this. But try to plan your project a year or 2 in advance. I have several projects that I've always got a back burner project. I've always got several back burner projects. So waiting until the NOFA comes out leaves little time for determining the specifics of your scope of work and developing your budget professionally. A concept of a project and a specific ready-to-go project is vastly different. And the other thing that we take into consideration for this, and this is one of the things that I have seen that happen with tribes, is you can have several departments that want to apply for this ICDBG. And so then it becomes an argument, for lack of a better word, over who gets to trump and who gets who trumps the cards here to be able to say, no, 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 tribal government's applying for this. No, 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 housing's going to apply for this. No, 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 we need it for the health department. But if you've already got this all, so let's say you were counting on it. Now your tribe is all in arrears and everybody's trying to figure out, well, who should have it? You've already got this. The last minute they say, no, go ahead, Rosa. We're going to go ahead and let you do that for housing. And it's like, what? Holy cow, I have no time left. But if I plan in advance and I've already got my information down, I've already met with architects and engineers. I've already had them walk the site. They're already familiar with it. If you wait until that NOFA comes out, the people that you need to help you put your grant together doesn't necessarily have the same work schedule as you have, and especially your architects and engineers. So being able to coordinate that with them is not as easy as it sounds. Oh, well, I'll just call them and have them come over. Oh, well, guess what? They're already managing several other projects and they don't have any time that they can get over. Then what are you going to do? If you prepared it in advance and you have time to work with them and start getting your numbers together, so what if the other department wrote that ICDBG? You've already got your project started. You've already had your architects and engineers. They're already familiar. They've been on site. They've got a vision of it. They've got a memory of it. Easier for them, easier for you. Create your own narrative format immediately. So this is what I was talking about. So nothing is prohibiting you at all from going and downloading that last NOFA. Download it, export it as a Word, cut everything out of it that you don't need for your NOFA. And under each category, identify who it is you need things from, what it is that you can put there. Put little bullets under each category. So you've got 5 rating factors. Start that. We all have idle time, or maybe at the end of the day when your brain is just too dead and it's like, I can't start another project right now. You can pull that up. Maybe you're just going to put a few bullets under something. But it's amazing how much that efficiency and thinking things through helps you out on the other end. So maybe a section, okay, I'm going to have pictures, I'm going to have maps, I'm going to take pictures of this housing, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to develop my list. No matter how minuscule you may think it is, those things don't seem so minuscule when you're trying to write this really quickly, and then all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of minuscule things added in all at once. Once you develop your budget, so let's say this is the goal and you're going to develop this. You know that you're going to write this. And usually you're not going to do this part of it until you're absolutely sure of what your project is, the NOFA has come out. But once you develop your budget and your leverage, if you're doing a public facility, remember you've got to do your maintenance and operation plan. Get that tribal resolution completed and signed. The tribal resolution has to state the amount you're applying for, the leverage amount, where that leverage is coming from, and the dollar value of the budget created for the maintenance and operation agreement for 5 years, and who is responsible for the maintenance and operation budget. That's a lot that you've got to remember. Again, if you put everything off and then you're trying to get these things at the last minute, it creates a lot of stress. So create a folder for all your attachments. You can start doing this right now. Nothing is keeping you from doing this, including all your mandatory forms. Most of your forms are going to be on your grants.gov anyway, but put your attachments together, and you can put them in sequence with the rating factor for which you're referencing. Put a footnote on each attachment for the rating factor that it's aligned with and the page number. So you can't really put your page numbers on until you have all your attachments. And then you're going to, how I do it anyway is I start so your narrative can't be more than 30 pages. And I don't think I've ever submitted one for under 30. So I know that my attachments is going to start with page 31. I'm not going to start it with page 1. I'm going to start it with page 31 so that it's congruent through from where the narrative ended. If you're not the grant writer, support yours, whether it's a staff or a consultant, because let's face it, a grant writer's position is performance-based. And if they don't show you the money, you don't need them. And this adds another level of stress on them to perform. And you may think that what they need from you is not that imperative, and you'll get to it when you get to it. But when in actuality, you could really be holding up the entire process. So try to be as supportive of anybody who's writing a grant for you. Support the grant writer. So as I said, if everyone held off providing their information, the grant writer is left cramming at the last minute. They're working late nights, weekends, and losing sleep. And an application written in haste has a higher risk of misinformation. Cooperate for your level of participation, please. It's not just about the grant writer is neurotic. Yes, I am. But I need this information. And when it all backs up, it gets highly stressful. If you are the housing director and the grant writer, bless you. You already have a full-time job. You've got staff to supervise. You've got flyers to put out. You have tribal government, housing commissioners, and the community counting on you. This is a lot of pressure. Immediately organize your to-do list and follow all the steps given here. Give people immediate notice of information you need in advance with a timeline of when you want the information. Ask for the information sooner rather than later, and ask for it before your drop dead deadline, which they all know we're doing that anyway, so then they're still going to procrastinate. It's like the friend that you have that's always late for everything, and so the party starts at 6:30, so you tell them it's 5:30, but they already know that you're going to do that, so they're still late. It kind of works in the business office like that sometimes too. But people do procrastinate, and life happens, and it comes back on you. Housing directors rock. They really do. And I don't know how you can be a housing director and write grants too, but I've had to work with several of them that they have to feed you the information. This still takes a tremendous amount of time. But this gives them a few days before the panic sets in. Put things in writing to cover yourself. Kindly request the information you need in an email. This works for both parties. They see it, they can print it off, they have a hard copy, they can put a reminder in their phone, on their Outlook, and it allows them to put it on their to-do list. If they don't get you the information and you aren't able to submit the application because of that, or were weak in that area of the proposal, you have evidence they were unsuccessful in their response to the criteria you needed. And I know that this can sound kind of brutal, but you literally cannot get points in something if the information you need from someone is not provided. So contrary to the outside thought process, writing a federal grant is not a fill-in-the-blank application. This is a highly competitive, and the matter of losing a few points can make the difference in being awarded. So I will say this. I swear I'll set up out of my casket and say, get every single solitary point you can. Every single point that you can. And yes, there are people that literally think that these grant applications, because there are grant applications and there's renewals of programs that's called a grant, that they're just literally filling in information. It's a renewal each year. But there are people that literally think that this is what we're doing when we write an ICDBG. We're just filling in blanks. Excuse me. So get as much done as soon as you can. Why? Software programs glitch. So I wrote a grant for a tribe for the ICDBG that was due October 5th. Guess what happened October 4th? Never has happened. Never. All of a sudden, my scanner wouldn't scan. Not at all. It didn't have any error messages. I had to get someone to come help me. 4 hours. Now, this was the day before the grant was due, and the goal was to submit it that day. So what would happen if this happened on the 5th, the day that it was due? These things happen. I can almost promise you. The web gets wonky. You glare daggers at it, and it just spins and spins and spins. And you're like, how can this happen right now? These things happen. The internet goes down, power outages, battery backups malfunction, tribal members pass away, offices close, council meetings get rescheduled. And when that happens and you've waited till the last minute to get that tribal resolution, and I have seen this happen so many times, massive panic, because you've got to have that resolution. And guess what? Something happened and they rescheduled council. Now they've got to have a special council meeting, or they're trying to do a survey, a phone survey to get approval. And it's not funny. Life happens. You get sick. Your family gets sick. Company decides to show up and stay with you. Bad weather closes the office. And then there's holidays. Expect the unexpected. And for all these same reasons, do not wait till the day the grant is due to submit your grant on grants.gov. You have a high probability of bottlenecking, and you're going to be freaking out if you're trying to submit and it's not going through. You always want to submit earlier. Then if there's that problem, or it looks like it got uploaded, but you didn't get that notification in your email, you'll get an instant notification. If you didn't get that, you're going to go back in and look and say, hey, what's going on? You're going to call the help desk. You've got time to troubleshoot. But I literally have friends in this field that they are minutes, literally minutes away from the deadline date. I think it's 12 p.m. and they're 11:59. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to make me have a heart attack. And this isn't even my grant. Save your information to the cloud. I know like a lot of people have problems with that. They don't like it. They don't feel safe. So whatever. But if you do, all the while you're writing, keep saving it to the cloud. If you don't do that, send a copy of it to your personal email. So if something happens and your server at work crashes, if you saved everything to a thumb drive and then you lost it, we've all done that. If you can't get into work, you have access to the latest electronic version and you have lost nothing. Also, print off a hard copy. I don't know how many this has happened to, but thank God I print off hard copies, because I thought that I saved it, closed it out, and when I opened it back up, which normally these things don't happen because it automatically saves every so often, right? So I must have closed it out before it did the backup save. So I had that hard copy so I could see what I had just added to it. Send your grants.gov information to your personal email as well. So if you can't log into your email, or again, what if the server crashes at work? If you have that information, double, whatever, I just always have a backup plan. If you've got that in your personal email, you can sign in remotely and you can still upload your application. Surround yourself with a team. So many times a grant writer really is an island all to themselves. So form a committee, spread the love and the work. And they love being a part of it. They really do. Empower the community to be a part of their development and their history. I strongly recommend a committee from the inception of an idea, even if it's years out. Because like I said, we are just now seeing 2 projects come to fruition that we started planning on 10 years ago. So when I say we started planning on it 10 years ago, 10 years ago, it was an idea. It was a dream. It was a concept. So did I download my application and start my format for that? No, I did not. I had a folder for my dreams and wishes and priorities. But I knew that we had other priorities of things that were going to have to come first before that. But I have a dreams to achieve folder that's like, oh boy, yeah, oh, I can't wait till we get to do that one. Oh, that one. Oh, I can't wait. That's going to be a great one. And 10 years later, when you see it actually happen and you remember the people that you had the conversations with, and some of them have passed, and some of them have moved on to other jobs, or some of them get to look out the window and they get to see what was once barren land now has 8 kids outside waiting for a school bus. It's pretty phenomenal stuff. I keep telling this in every session too. I will tell it to staff, I'll tell it to anybody. Ask for help. Find someone who helps with the budget, someone who can give you updated data and stats. Work with your professionals that know all the elements that affect a construction and a rehab project. This and last year's ICDBG wanted youth involvement. How can you involve your youth? Ask for people to edit and score your application. Involve directors and staff for which the project is going to benefit. So the part of asking people to edit and score your application. I have a colleague at work that she actually used to do editing and stuff for an attorney's office. And I'll tell you what, she'd be like one of those nasty old school teachers that would beat you on the knuckles with a blessed ruler. And I have a wicked propensity to ramble. I'm sure you find that hard to believe. But when I write the same way that I talk, and I'm not trying to, when I'm just putting my first draft out, I'm not looking at sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, if I've said something 15 dozen times, because it's not, I'm just getting my thoughts there, and this is how I'm going to do it. So I learned I'm not going to ask her to do any editing until the darn thing is done, because she'll say, Rosa, you've already said that. This sentence goes on for 3 paragraphs and you could have said it with one statement. But she's right, and she's who I want to help me with my grants, with the verbiage, summarizing, and she's really good at looking at what is the criteria. Sometimes we get so lost in knowing what it is we're doing, and we're thinking we're stating it, and we aren't. She is superb at this and is a pain in my butt. I love her dearly. I appreciate it. But it feels like back when you were in junior high and you had to pass in your English report. And it's like, oh gosh, I can't. You just didn't even want to see that paper when it got back. You just knew. But you know what? It is the absolute best way to have a team. Is that's who you want. You don't want someone who's like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, isn't this wonderful? This is such a great idea. It may be all those things, but I may have missed the mark on some of these other things. I want somebody with a critical eye, and so do you. And we've got to be able to swallow our pride and know that we don't know it all. It's hard to believe. So this is redundant too, as far as engaging your community and how important it is for you as the grant writer. And it's going to keep you in tune to humanizing this, that it's not just a grant application, but it is more important to them. And they're learning leadership, they're learning empowerment, they're learning the value of creating history. They're learning pride. Dare to dream. I didn't push the button. Listen to conversations around you, and it's going to inspire you to come up with solutions with ICDBG. I swear, just keep your folder of your dreams to be achieved, and don't worry about how is it going to be done. When is it going to be done? How am I going to get that leverage? You ain't ready for it yet, but you can still dream. Where would we be if we didn't dream? Make friends with other grant writers. We're all competing for the same funds. I get it. But boy, this is so valuable. So for one thing, it builds camaraderie and a sense of I feel your pain. And two, you exchange ideas and discuss past projects and how you can create the same thing or on a different scale. And you learn new ideas for leveraging partnerships or a new project in some cases, lifelong friends. So back in the day before COVID, when we would go to Chicago for our application training for ICDBG, you always love seeing the grant writers that you were competing against. And it was to be like you'd scream and holler and hug each other. And then if they beat you, so even let's say if you both got awarded and that she got 2 more points than I did, I'm going to slap her upside the head and say, oh my God, you beat me by 2 points. It's just fun. It's something that we all agree on, but you're also cheering for each other and there's strength. You go out, you have lunch together and you figure out, it's like, well, gee, how did you get your leverage on that? Or how did you make that happen? Or what are you paying for your architects and engineering fees? You know, you talk these things through and then you see, it's like, oh, wow, that's great. I'm going to try that. And you want everybody to achieve, but that camaraderie that you build up and that somebody in this field understands what it takes for you to do your job. People can appreciate it, but if they don't do this, they do not. It's just like, we don't know what it's like to be a surgeon, do we? If there's a surgeon here, please raise your hand. But we don't know what it takes. And we know that they went to school. We know that they've seen death. We know that they've saved lives. We know that they put in long hours. We know their feet must hurt, but we don't know what it takes. So I'm not saying, whoa, it's us grant writers, but I'm saying that it's a specific field. And so make friends with those who do the same darn thing, praise them, lift them up, and compete with them, because competition is a healthy thing and it's fun. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and this means anything from your regulations, your designs. You're paying that architect and engineering firm. You have every right to ask questions. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we using this materials? Well, this layout doesn't make sense. Why is that? You're paying for that. You're responsible for these outcomes. If you've got questions about the interpretation of the NOFA, ask. At the end of it, they always say, if you have any questions, ask. This is who to reach. You have grant specialists from HUD that's there to help you. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask. It's better to ask the question and be thought a fool than to not ask the question and end up being fooled and unfunded. So swallow your pride and ask. One of the things that you can do is you can make a list of questions to any department or agency before randomly sending them 15 emails or phone calls for one question at a time. I have learned this. I was really bad at this, and no wonder everybody would just grit their teeth if they saw me coming. It's like, what does she want now? She was just in here. And I was like, oh yeah, I could probably just make a list and then go check on them. That probably they'd probably like that better, because it's like, yeah, I wouldn't like it if they kept calling me every 15 minutes. So be efficient with people's time. We aren't the only ones with a demanding schedule. Show your gratitude. You collect more flies with honey than vinegar. Send handwritten, old-fashioned thank you notes to staff and outside agencies who helped you. While it may be the financial director's job to give you the financial statements, copies of policies, etc., thanking them for providing you the information is a key essential ingredient to life's ethical standards, and we've gotten away from this. An example that really choked me up was, I believe it was the youth center, and there was a woman that helped us. She she came in and cleaned up debris and things like that. And so when we had a staff day, I recognized the advisory committee, right? Everybody that started. So maybe if they started in the pre-planning and they couldn't finish, they still participated. They still had an impact on this. So the advisory committee and this woman, and they all just got a little certificate of appreciation. It printed off of the internet. She got all choked up. She took it home. She put it in a frame. She had a little bouquet of flowers and a candle, and she took a picture of it and put it on Facebook and how much it meant to her to be recognized. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so glad I did that. You do not realize that something that simple affects somebody to that extent that they're choked up. They were recognized for doing something that may be considered their job anyway. But how many of us do our jobs and don't feel like we get a thank you? When you thank somebody and you sincerely mean it and write it in your handwriting, it means something. So thank them. If you do send an email, CC their supervisor. State how appreciative you are for their help. And as I said, during appreciation days, have certificates drawn up. Present it to the staff that help you. And it really is amazing how far gratitude and recognition goes. If you are unfunded, I'm trying to shut this off. So if you're unfunded, get a copy of your score and review it with your grant specialist from HUD in your region. I've been there, I've done it, and I have the sorry you weren't awarded letter. But HUD staff are truly articulate and responsive. They want you to succeed, and they will explain where you were weak in your application. They don't just tell you where you were weak. They will tell you how many points you lost in that section. This is massively important to you to do this because this is going to help you immediately. You're going to remove that when you do your next application. Oh, I see why I lost 2 points on that. I get it now. So I got to make sure that I state that they will be doing those same activities in this grant application, or what their outcomes actually were. I just stated what it was they were doing and not what the outcome was and how it was successful. And it is human nature for us to get defensive. It really is. And especially for people like us, type A personality, expressive folks, it is greatly disappointing, and it is a shock to the ego. A shot, not a shock, is a shock too. But it's difficult. It's difficult for everybody. But you have to pick up and you have to get going. And I can honestly say that in my career, not just tribal, so many times when something has failed, and how many times can we say this in our own personal lives? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we didn't get that. That wouldn't have worked out like that at all. I'm so glad I dodged that bullet. Many times, oh my gosh, it just bothers me so bad if we don't get the funding and I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe we're still going to apply it for the same thing, but there's reasons, and maybe it's that we need to learn. Maybe it's something else that we'll never know, but it's part of writing grants is we're not going to be 100%. So all is not lost. So if you can get past all that, you will learn, and it's going to give you a head start for a much stronger application the next time around. So don't be defeated. Learn from your mistakes or your weaknesses, and sometimes it has more to do with the program's audit or monitoring findings or too much money in their e-logs, that it's not necessarily how the grant was written. It's that they lost so many points on that. They wouldn't have been able, it wouldn't have been funded. We've talked about this, the value of attending trainings. Be considerate of the scorer. You think about the people who are reading these applications. You think of how much work it took you to put that application through, and then how many pages of your attachments you've got. You imagine having to read all of these? No, thank you. So follow the exact format of your NOFA, answer every single question in the sequence it was given. You want to make it as easy as possible for whoever's reading and scoring your application. They want to be able to answer the questions. They have a whole scoring criteria, and it follows the format of what it is their suggestion. You're going to make it so much easier for them to do that. You don't want to force them into having to search for your information, or you put the information in there, but it's under the wrong subtitle. Your format was totally off kilter. Follow sequentially the format.
Hazardous substance.
So this is comprehensive, it's competitive, and it's stressful. And we work late nights, early mornings. We wake up in the middle of the night and take down notes. Our lovely subconscious mind has decided it's a good time to nudge us and wake us up and remind us of, and then you're sending yourself a text on your phone to your email, remember to do these things. You're going to work weekends and holidays, and if you're not organized or people don't get you the information you need to write the grant, and then you wait. That is a hard part too. And I don't know how many of you have ever submitted a grant and thought, oh my gosh, I forgot to say this. Oh, I should have added that. And it's too late. And you're wondering, I don't know if you've done it. And then I'll go back and I'll reread the whole grant all over again. It's like, it's done. It's in. Me reading it again isn't going to change it. Self-care is a must. It's hard to find a grant writer that is really good at this, but for me, I love to dance and I love loud music and I like to eat chips. So the eating healthy doesn't really, I have a hard time with that. But connect with whatever inspires you or is spiritual for you, and get some exercise and surround yourself with people that you love and love you right back. And this sounds so basic, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, okay, this was a great advice. But it is so true, especially when you're being drained. You need to be fed, and not just necessarily good food. You need to be fed with people who are supportive and just taking your mind off of this. So rock and roll. You can do it. Give yourself a good old pat on the back. Someone doesn't even know you, and you are improving the quality of their life. Yeah, this gets me choked up because it is so true. You are a part of history, so be a good part. And congratulations. I wish you all the best, and I thank you for everyone who has participated. I hope that this information has been valuable for you. And like we've said in the other sessions, if you want to reach out and ask me any questions, I'd be more than happy to help you. And many blessings to you, and happy Thanksgiving coming up soon. Are you there, Wista?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for an amazing webinar. I'm launching the survey right now. Thank you so much, Rosa. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you could please fill out the survey, please let us know what you thought about today's webinar. Your feedback greatly helps Rosa know what you would like to know in the future, what you like, what you didn't like. Anything that the NLC can improve on is greatly appreciated. Remember, it is anonymous, so please let us know what you think. Our next webinar is going to be November 8th. It is Bridges Over Boundaries, Uniting for a Safer Community, presented by William Latchford, President of Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. As always, registration is free. It'll be from 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska time. As always, you can access any of our recordings on our website up to 2 years. It is under www.nativelearningcenter.com under the Cathedras Recorded Webinars tab. Currently, we are having a slight Adobe glitch with the webinar recordings. So if you are having any issues accessing your webinar, please feel free to email me and I will do my very best to help you. Please check out our upcoming events. They will be found on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Please don't forget, we also have a podcast titled Hope a Thing, a Native American Podcast, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Simplecast. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We greatly appreciate that you could take the time to spend the webinar with us. And thank you a lot, Rosa, for doing today's webinar. We greatly appreciate you. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.